Another session of Play Like Karpov. And in today's session, Karpov will play an endgame. It's one of my favorite endgame, and it was played between Ljubomir, Ljubojevic, and Anatoly Karpov. First of all, let's evaluate the position a little bit. Who is better? First of all, what do you think? We could say that at the first sight that, okay, white should be better, right? Because of the space advantage. And because these pawns fixed on dark squares, which can be a potential, targets, and not only these pawns are fixed on dark squares, but also these two guys. So somehow the bishop is getting behind our position. I mean, we will have huge struggle to protect these two guys here, because probably we cannot really deal with an f8 bishop. But right now, it's just it's not about happening. But the thing is, the bishop right now has no targets, and if we just make sure in the future that we will just keep it that way. So we will not allowing the bishop to come behind our position. This bishop will never find target. The other thing is if we are choosing the right pawn structure here, simply the knight will dominate the bishop. And also there is a principle which, especially in endgames, we are mainly talking about endgames because, of course, when 5 other pieces on the board, we can't really talk about this principle. But in endgames, queen and knight, especially against the queen and bishop, is always deadly. It's always such a strong combination. These two guys against these two guys is always very, very strong. Sometimes the same principle we can talk about the same principle as the opposite color bishops. So if this knight is moving and finding targets on the light squares, this bishop will not be able to protect any of those. The position is probably equal. So in objectively speaking, it has to be equal. In case of white's perfect play, it's equal. But the thing is, black cannot really lose it unless we are doing some major blunder. Black cannot really lose this. How would you play here? Black is on turn, by the way. We need to find the plan. It's also not easy to make progress because whenever the queen just tries to find some target on the queen side or king side, immediately the queen is getting checks. So it's really difficult to and also you mentioned queen h7, which is a potential threat sometimes. So how would you deal with queen h7? First of all, this is the first question you have to answer. By the way, g6 happened in the game. G6 was a brilliant move because you're just simply fixing your pawns in the light squares, and your opponent is simply playing h5 and knight f5. And from that point, I mean, look at our knight. Our knight is just so cemented on f5. No one can really touch it. So let's say we go g6, ag, fg. I mean, maybe we created another pawn island. That's true. I give you that one. But after h5, knight f5, look at that knight. We prevented queen h7. 1, 2. We are going to place our pawns on light squares. 3. Our knight couldn't really find outposts. What does a knight need? Outposts, right? Or blockade, besides targets. But in general, if you just wanna place it somewhere, knight need an outpost. The only possible outpost here on the board is the f5 square. But the knight is always met by g4. Of course, maybe not immediate, but of course, in general we don't wanna. If you wanna win the game, of course, if your goal is a draw, you can freely trade the knight for this bishop, and white will squeeze you a little bit because of the space advantage, and also we've seen these 4 going through passing through these 4 in some opponent games, some pushing g5, f5, and creating these opponent game motifs. But in general, the knight needs an outpost. How can you do that? You want to cement f5 square. How can you do that? You want to you want to have this, and then putting the knight on f5. This is all you need. In my opinion, the fact that the white had the pawn on h5, this was the reason why black can actually play this position on. If the pawn was on h2, I don't think this is possible, because the knight will never find an outpost. It always met by g4. If he goes g4, same thing. Okay, we still placed the pawn on. We still kept our pawn on a dark square, but this bishop can never really attack it. And even if it attacks it, I mean from an outpost, which is a light square, we are protecting our pawn. So this bishop will never win this pawn. Also, this pawn is on light square, so once we trade the queens off, no one can really, the king is just so far away from protecting this guy. So this is scenario number 1. Scenario number 2, what happened in the game, is just ag6, fg6, and after h5, knight f5, voila, we have an outpost for the knight. And from now on, we can move on. Now we can play on. Okay, ag, fg. And in my opinion, white should have pushed g4. We can't really play h5 right away. I forgot to mention because of f5. Apparently, this is a very, very strong move. And the problem is, we can do this. I'm not saying h5 is a bad move, but white has this brilliant resource, which is f5. And in case of gf, this we cannot do because we no longer have the outpost for the knight on f5. And look at that, white has a brilliant such strong pass pawn. In case of e takes f5, g takes, and bishop f4, and all of a sudden the bishop is going to be strong. He will push e6 now. He has a passer as well, and as we know from the principles, the knight with pass pawns are not very strong. A bishop with pass pawns always stronger. We can just prepare for h5. We can make this move anytime we want, so we don't have to be on rush. Ljubojevic basically made all the mistakes in the game what you shouldn't make in endgames. Okay, this move he made, it was still not that big of a deal, but in general I don't like it. He played a3. I don't really like, of course, what does white want here? Of course, white desperately needs to find a counterplay. What was the point of a3?
They're trying to push b4.
Yeah, exactly. So he tries to gain space on the queen side, and he tries to gain space. How can we deal with that? Here the key is to eliminate all the counterplay what white can generate. I don't think b4 we can allow. Why? Because if he goes b4, if we just leave it that way, we don't touch it, he will take on c5, and all of a sudden he can make a target. Because in terms of pawn fixment, there is no difference between in terms of like what color our pawns got fixed in case he goes b4 and takes on c5, or we just leave it like that because our pawns on dark squares. Either way. But after b takes c5, all of a sudden no one is protecting this guy, and it's on dark square. But right now our pawn chain, the weakest, our base of our pawn chain is this guy, and this guy cannot be targeted. So right now it doesn't really matter if it's on dark squares, because it's hard to do anything with this pawn chain. But all of a sudden, if he takes here, and right then no one is supporting this guy, and all of a sudden this is a problem. If we take on b4, and then maybe he can create a pass pawn. I'm not so sure if he really wanna give up on d5 square, but all of a sudden, he's gaining space. This is we cannot allow. So again, we have to be prophylactic here before we do anything on the king side. Always make sure that you eliminate possible threats of your opponent, and then you can deal with your own plan. This was the mindset of Karpov. What do you have in mind about preventing?
Yeah, I only see one way to physically stop. I mean, not even stop, but try to discourage white from playing b4. But I mean, I don't like playing a5 here because he still plays b4. I don't think that pawn sacrifice is something white really won't do. So after a3, I don't think that a5 is any good for black.
a5 is I think this is what happened in the game. That's the only way.
Yeah, but
that's the only way. So I mean, right now this pawn sacrifice, I don't think it's working. I mean, we just take it twice, no?
yeah, and if he plays, for example, queen b1 to keep an eye on g6 again.
It's hanging.
c4 is hanging.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also now we have access to d square, sometimes because of the pin, you know.
Oh, okay.
And also, if we go this way, we can stabilize with knight c6. You just, I mean, don't forget. Maybe you created. I mean, you opened up space around our king, which is obviously the bishop will get benefited by. But you also created a weakness, and it's on light square. So if I double attack it, you will not be able to protect it. If your king is, king was still on c1. So I mean, this is not really happening now. This is not really happening now. And also, a4 is kind of a threat. Fixing his pawn structure, because we can easily protect it by queen c6. So this is why Ljubojevic played b3, because this was a threat. He couldn't allow that. I'm not so sure if you checked my game from last week on Wednesday. I made a recap of Hungarian League, but basically, okay, it was in the opening, but it was the same same idea with a4 and just fixing opponent's pawn structure in this way. All right, now we have time. Of course, h5, because now we have this beautiful pawn structure against this pawn structure, and the knight will find such a strong outpost on f5. Of course, this position is objectively equal. But it's a very, very, very safe push for black, because black can never lose this game, never ever. And the knight is always stronger. White played queen e4, knight f5, bishop f2. We need to find a plan. We did everything we could on the king side. So we fixed our pawn structure. We found a beautiful outpost for the knight. The bishop from now on it has to defend g3, and also which I didn't mention. So from now on, one piece always has to keep an eye on g3. That's very important because of the f5 knight.
Probably I played queen d7.
Yes, queen d7. Queen d7, very nice move. Just controlling over the d file, and not allowing the king to just getting closer to the pawn, and by that he can free the bishop. And of course, the king in this case is so much stronger, so much more useful defender, because he will probably need the bishop to create some counterplay. And now this move it blew my mind. I analyzed this endgame for hours back then, and this game is. I mean, this move is just. It was so hard to believe that this actually happened. White played a4. It's just simply probably this was the worst move of the game. I don't want to take any credit from Ljubojevic, because he was a brilliant player. But he should have watched more Karpov games. I would say, and he would improve positionally like right away. I mean, by this a4 move, basically white just gave up on any sort of counterplay in the future, right away, because he just fixed his pawn structure. Okay, maybe he fixed our pawn structure. That's true. Maybe he was afraid of a4. I'm pretty sure he had a good reason. So this we don't have to like picture this pawn move like, oh, I'm just making a move and okay, yeah, it was like eeny, meeny, miny, mo, and finally, I mean, it came to the pawn. It wasn't like that. I'm pretty sure he had a very good reason. Maybe, you know, he wanted to prevent a4, or I don't know. I'm pretty sure he had a good reason, but simply he really needed this break for later. If he is just well, you know, he's well prepared for that. He would always need to break b4. He should have just kept his pawn structure that way, but you know, with this a4, he just made sure that there will be no breaks in the king side. So black can actually leave the pawn structure like that. Okay, let's move on. He played a4, terrible move. He helped us out big time.
I'm firstly looking on how to prevent the queen from getting like any squares whatsoever. So maybe like the setup with the queen on d8 and the king on c7, so that
very nice.
But I don't know in which order to do so, because if I play queen d8 right away, he has queen c7 perhaps, and if I play king c7, he has queen a8.
Very nice. Yes, Karpov played king c7 because queen a8 was losing, just simply queen d3. And queen a7 check, king c8. That's a very important order because king d8 was running into queen b6 check, king c8. Now, I mean, he cannot take on b6 because we take the bishop with a check. So he can't do that. He just keeps checking us, and we're just going all the way to you know, f7, and after knight e7 it's over because this is hanging and queen f1. So he couldn't do that. He couldn't do that. He can't play queen a8. He had to play. He played king c2, and now queen d8. And exactly, this is the plan to push g5. This is the plan what Karpov played. But thanks to this a4, another plan became available, which is exchanging the queens. That becomes very, very interesting. And actually, queen b7 is. When I analyzed this, I remember I'm not sure where I saw this game at first, in which book, but they I'm 100% sure they didn't mention queen b7. And actually, this is a draw, but it's like a nightmare for white. I think the reason why Karpov, first of all, the reason why Karpov didn't make the exchange because it was so hard to foresee everything in advance. So it was just impossible to like calculate every single possible line. If you can make a 2-1, can you make a is there a 2-1 position, or is there like a crucial break on the king side at all? And the other reason I think why he didn't make this move is because he can do it anytime. So even if he changed his mind, like two moves later, it will not change it. It will not change a thing because the king in the meantime cannot really gain tempos because it's the d file is blocked from the king, from the white king. So we can just play king c7 first, play queen d8. We can just make any type of like queen moves. And if we change our mind, we can always make like return to the idea of exchanging queens. So basically, he didn't do it right away. What would happen if we played let's say king c2 or let's say queen b7 now? This is a nightmare for white, by the way. King b7, king d2, king c6. And why did it become available? Why? Because of course, in order to win the game here, the only plan is bring the king here and push g5, right? Yeah. But while the pawn was on a3, it was not possible. So let's say white plays king c2. If he trade, he just goes king c3. He can even wait, but he can just push b4 right away. But he can just wait. He can just wait the king to get here, and after b4, he can even win the game in some cases. Because all of a sudden these guys can be targeted by b4 by breaking on the queen side. But after a4, it was not possible. That's why I didn't want to tell you earlier why a4 was a terrible move, because you might come up with this plan of queen b7, but very nicely you found another one. So basically, queen b7. Let's see how this endgame continues. King c6, king e2, king d7, king f3, king e7. And now let's say white can do like white has two defense here. One is g4 and one is wait. You know, just wait and not doing anything. Let's start with the waiting method. King f7, king f3, king g7, king e4, and now brilliant move. King h7. King f3, king h6, and this is the 2-1 position. Why? Because white has basically only move here. White has only move. Bishop g1 is only move. Bishop e1 obviously is losing a pawn by knight d4, so he can't do that because the pawn is falling. He can't lose this guy. In some cases he can, but not here. For example, king g2, now g5, fg, king g5, king h3, and now knight d4 all of a sudden becomes available because the pawn endgame is winning. Bishop e3, we go back here, we go back to g6, g4, knight takes b3, king h4, takes, and now only one winning move. Only one winning move, knight a1. King f4, knight c2, we want to target this guy.
Yeah.
Bishop d2. Now it's very important. We can't play knight h3 because king e4, knight c4, and bishop c3, and the knight is trapped. And king d3 is coming. We can't play knight h3, but king h5 with the you know like the pawn endgame method. We just is going king h5. And now this position is winning. I'm not going to like show you everything because I analyzed it like 20 more moves. This is winning. It's not very difficult to find the moves. So king g2 is losing, so he cannot really allow to push I mean, he can allow, but the king has to be here. So bishop g1. Bishop g1 is a draw. Now for some reason we don't push g5. Why is that? I'm just thinking. Maybe because he can go g4. Yeah. So why the king was here? Why the king was here and we push g5? He couldn't push g4. But if we push g5, I think he can just go g4. And now knight d4 is not available, of course, because he just takes everything. And you know we lose the pawn endgame. We don't have a passer. This knight d4 idea can only be possible if we have another passer, you know, and the king cannot, you know, catch both. So knight d4 is not available. Knight h4, and he goes king g3. And now we don't have access to g takes f4, and we can. I mean, we are not getting in trouble, but knight g6 and yeah, actually we are getting in trouble, right? Wow. Yeah, we got in trouble, so we can get in trouble. So yeah, not g5 but h4. That's the huge point. And now white has only one move, which is g4. G takes h4 is losing because of king h5. And now we just take on h4, king h3, knight h4, and slowly we are coming closer. And eventually he cannot protect f2. Let's say bishop f2 now. I think we just simply take. The pawn game is always losing. This is always losing because we just push g5, right? We put the king here, we push g5, and he will lose this guy. That's like easy. Wait, hold on. We have to make no. Sorry, king g3, king e4, king g4, just to prevent f5 idea. And fg, king g5, and eventually he will lose this guy. You know, like. So he can't really do that because the pawn game is always winning. That's why, I mean, he can never really, you know, like take our knight. Knight h4, king somewhere, and king g4. And slowly, with the same method, we will just win this guy most likely. So this is g takes h4 is losing. He must play g4. Knight d4 check. Now, what I mentioned, he cannot really take here because he cannot like catch both of the pawns. But he has king g2, knight b3, bishop e3, just to prevent knight d2, knight d4 back, f5 check, king g7, bishop g5. This line is a little bit crazy. gf, knight f5, king h3, bishop, and all of a sudden now the bishop found target. Bishop, king h3, king g6, bishop d8, knight e3, bishop b6, knight c4, bishop c5, king f5, and apparently this is a draw. Unbelievable. Because this guy is fixed on the wrong square. e5, king g4, king d3, bishop e1, and we can't promote. That's crazy, right? This is a draw.
Yeah, I don't.
This is a draw.
Yeah.
But this is the only way to make a draw. This is the only way to make a draw. So like Karpov made, I mean, objectively he made the right call. Karpov played king c7, king c2, queen d8. Now in case of queen d3, queen a8 simply, and the queen is coming to g2, and all these squares are covered, so the king cannot really penetrate, and we just go queen g2, and from that point it's a nightmare, because even knight d4 becomes available once the bishop is pinned. So he can't allow that. So also is the same thing. The king has to cover all these squares, and the queen has to cover this diagonal. And white has to make sure that we can't really get behind his position. That's very important. That's why Ljubojevic just waited with king c1. Now g5. This is the plan you mentioned very nicely. And now I think he has to take. If he allows this is even worse, because from now on we can create a passer with h4 anytime. And this looks so strong. He can't do that. So he has to eliminate as many materials from the board as he can. fg5, queen takes g5, king c2. And now we must find a plan. We made huge progress.
Knight e7 with the idea of placing the knight on g6 is very strong for black.
Or on e6, on c6.
Yeah, but I was slightly worried about queen h7 then.
Yeah, yeah. True.
I don't know.
Yeah, but maybe we can, like hide the king, because he can only give checks on these squares. G7 is so maybe we can also place it here in some cases. But yeah, knight g6, also queen f5 idea. We can also trade queens. Yes, knight e7. So basically, we eliminated or removed or get rid of our potential weakness. So the knight no longer needs to be placed on f5, and that it can find a target on e5 as well. Yes, very nice. Knight e7. This is exactly what happened. Queen e7. Karpov played king d7. Surprisingly, queen g6 was a draw. Queen g6, knight g6, and it seems like black cannot protect e5. Bishop e3. Of course, we can't really take king d7. Of course, the pawn game is lost. He can't do that, because general principle of pawn games, we just make a deflection in the side, and we will take these two guys and we will just run to the other side. It's easy. With the pass pawn games are usually winning. So, but not bishop f4, but king d3, and knight e5, king e4, and this is a draw. This is a draw. Of course, we can still play on. It's not immediate draw, but the king just got got improved, and also we can't really move the king from here, because all of a sudden the bishop will find target on b6. and in the meantime we can't really attack this guy, and we can't really advance our passer. So how do we make progress here? It's probably not possible. So Karpov of course saw that, so he didn't play queen g6, he played king d7, queen e4 back. White didn't have anything better. Now he wants queen b7 check, of course. Maybe queen b7 is not doing much because we have king e8. We can take because queen f5, queen f2, but you know, in some cases it's threatening. The question is queen f5 a move or not?
Oh, of course, queen f5 and take with the pawn, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exactly. And then we have access to king e6, and the king will take on e5. That's the huge thing. Or even if not another king takes, even if the knight takes, that's a huge difference. All of a sudden. Yeah, queen f5, brilliant move. Of course, white couldn't take, but if white takes, just e takes f5. This is losing. King gets to e6. Now it's different because in the previous line, you know, the king could get to e4 while we had pawn on e6. But now it's different. The king cannot be improved to e4 because you know the pawn is on f5. That's huge. So white played queen d3 check. Question: where do you go? Do you take or what kind of king move you make? Karpov played king c6, another brilliant move. Now, of course, white has to take. White has to take. That's the only move because otherwise we take on e5. So queen takes f5 only move. E takes f5. Now knight g6 is threatening. You know, with the same idea with this bishop e3, that the difference is, you know, is the king is on c6, not on e8. Yeah. Bishop e3, knight g6, e6, king d6, and he tried the same thing with bishop g5, but that one was probably losing. What do you think? What is the draw here with white? I just flipped the board. There's only one draw here. It's king d3, king e6, and bishop f4. And the pawn game is a draw. That's the only move. That's the only way. And this is a draw. Because you can break. You can break here.
Yeah.
And it's draw by one tempo. You know. King g6 and king g2. King a6, king h2. And he would just wait here. This, of course, is a draw, and he will just wait here. That's crazy. And actually, Ljubojevic didn't find this. Didn't find this bishop f4 idea. That was the only draw. That was the only draw. He played bishop g5. The bishop g5. King takes e6. King d2.
Yeah, I think we can play f4 here.
Mm-hmm.
And if pawn takes, we play king f5.
This was still objectively a draw, but it was impossible to find.
Mm-hmm.
G takes, gf, h4, king e3, h3, king f3, king f5, king g3, knight f4, bishop d8, knight e2, king h3, knight c1, or knight d4, doesn't matter. And now,
probably you cannot defend the b6 pawn with black, so maybe I just start bringing the king closer. Or... Yeah,
that was the key. Bishop b6. Ljubojevic took on b6, and that was losing. Actually, it's actually crazy.
Yeah, I mean,
so bishop b6 was losing, only because there is a key square. There is a key square you have to reach. And by bishop b6 he lost a very serious tempo. So king g2 or king g3 probably doesn't matter. King g3. This is according to table base. Okay, this is still not in table base, but if we just eliminate a couple of pawns, it will be on table base already with 7 pieces. King g3, king e4, king f2, knight b3, king e2, king d4, king d1, king c4, and king c2. This square is very important. And this is a draw. This is a draw. Unbelievable. I mean, probably I would resign here. This is a draw. But the problem was, with bishop takes, if it started with bishop b6, his knight takes b3. Didn't really matter. King g3 was also losing. King e4, king f2, king d3, king e1, king c4, king d1, and king d3 very important. This is why I said this square was important. If the king reaches this square, I mean, now black doesn't care about this guy. He will just push the pawn. He will just push the pawn all the way to c2. Actually, the key was not protecting this, or not, you know, like not taking this as black. The key was reaching this square on d3. If the point he took on b6, it didn't really matter. Okay, he played bishop d8, but okay, king d4, king g4, king d3, king f4, king c4, king e4. Even king b4 was winning now, but Karpov played king c3. Bishop f6, king c2. In case of king d5, it's just king d3, bishop e5, c4, king e3, c3, bishop f6, knight c5, king e2, and after king b3, he resigned.
Wow.
Just c2 and the knight d3, and it's unbelievable. In case of bishop d8, there was king d1, nasty move. And in case of bishop a5, c2, bishop d2, knight b3. And, you know, bishop has no squares. In case of king d4, just knight takes a4, king c4, knight b6, king b5, and a4. King b4 and knight d5 check. Otherwise, king b6 just a3.